From a vantage point, Ned directed the overall battle, ensuring that his archers supported Stannis' push, and that the northern cavalry did not overextend itself. Tywin's men fought fiercely, but they were outnumbered and caught off guard by the alliance. By midday, the Lannister lines wavered. Tywin, seeing the tide turning, tried to organize an orderly retreat, but Stannis' forces pressed relentlessly, cutting them off from escape routes. A final cavalry charge led by Robb Stark shattered the last of their defensive position. Tywin himself escaped with a handful of knights, riding hard to the south, leaving behind a battered, disheartened host. Thousands of Lannisters were slain or taken prisoner. The banners of the Lion of Lannister were trampled into the mud. When the carnage settled, Ned found Stannis in the midst of the battlefield, standing rigid among the fallen, his jaw set. Robb, spattered with blood and mud, dismounted to join them, gray wind snarling at the smell of death. The morning sun burned away the last of the fog, revealing a gruesome tableau of war. Stannis turned to Ned. "We have won a great victory, Lord Stark. This is the blow that may break the Lannisters' power in the Riverlands." Ned nodded, though he felt little joy in the victory. "Aye, we must see to the wounded, ensure our men are cared for. Then we must decide on our next step." Stannis' lips thinned. "Next step is clear. King's Landing is vulnerable. Joffrey's men cannot stand against our combined might. March with me. Let us claim the capital, dethrone Joffrey, and restore proper rule." Ned weighed the implications. If they marched together on the city, that would indeed challenge Joffrey's hold. But who would claim the throne once it was taken? Stannis obviously believed he was the rightful king. Ned carried Robert's decree naming Gendry. This alliance might collapse the moment they set foot in King's Landing. Still, if Joffrey fell, that would remove the Lannisters from power. Perhaps that was the greatest good at present. "We must be certain that the City Watch won't open the gates to us. Last I heard, the gold cloaks were in the pay of the Queen." Stannis' eyes burned. "Then we force the gates or starve them out. I will see the Iron Throne cleansed of usurpers. False usurpers, that is." Robb exchanged a glance with Ned. "Father, if we linger, the city might reinforce. We have momentum now." Ned ran a hand through his hair, streaked with dust and sweat. "Yes, we must move swiftly." "Very well, Lord Stannis. We march. But remember our agreement. Gendry Baratheon is recognized in Robert's last will." Stannis cut him off. "We shall speak of it once the Lannisters are destroyed. Until then, let us stand united. Do not harry me with talk of a bastard's claim." Ned inhaled quietly. "So be it," he said, though his stomach twisted at the thought of what might happen once they reached the city. They spent the next days tending the wounded and consolidating the victory. Then the combined forces turned south, forging a path toward King's Landing. Word spread like wildfire that Tywin's host had been defeated, that the young wolf from the north and Stannis Baratheon marched side by side. The city must have quaked at the news. Cersei, Joffrey, and the small council now faced an army of tens of thousands. Over the course of that march, Ned sent ravens to Riverrun, instructing Catelyn to bring Gendry and join him when the time was right, or to wait until the city was secured. Reports came that Renly's forces might also be moving toward King's Landing from the south, not wishing Stannis to claim all the glory. The swirl of potential conflict grew more complicated by the day. At last, the looming walls of King's Landing came into view. Tents sprouted across the fields outside the gates as the allied host encamped. The city's walls bristled with defenders, catapults, and archers. The gold cloaks were indeed loyal to Joffrey, or at least to Cersei's coin. Stannis wasted no time, demanding the gates be opened in the name of the rightful king, proclaiming that Joffrey was no true heir. Ned stood beside him during these pronouncements, though he refrained from endorsing Stannis' claim, only stating that Joffrey was illegitimate. The city refused to yield. A siege began. Stannis pressed in from the north side, while Ned's forces spread around the western gates. Word arrived that Renly's army was approaching from the south, setting up a potential three-way confrontation for the capital. The tension was unlike anything Ned had ever experienced. He feared the city might starve, or that a final bloody assault would result in thousands of civilian deaths. Then, to complicate matters further, Renly arrived with a flourish of green and gold banners. He set up camp on the southern road, effectively surrounding the city from that side. A parley was arranged outside the walls, near the spot where they had once met to greet King Robert's triumphant return from hunts. It was an ironic echo, except this time Robert was gone, and his three would-be successors stood in tense adjacency. Stannis arrived with a retinue of grim-faced knights, the Red Priestess Melisandre at his side, though she said little. Ned approached with Robb and a few northern lords. Renly rode up, resplendent in bright armor, the golden rose of Tyrell embroidered on a cloak. His face lit with a wry smile upon seeing Stannis. "Brother," he drawled, "I see you've acquired some new friends." Stannis ignored the jab. "What do you want, Renly?" "Why, the throne, dear brother. But apparently you do as well, and so does Lord Stark's bastard boy." Renly eyed Ned. "Or is it the late king's bastard? The realm is quite confused." Ned kept his composure. "Lord Renly, if you would only—" Renly raised a hand. I know. Robert wrote something in his dying hours. I have heard the rumor. But it changes nothing. The realm needs a king who can rally support, not a newly discovered bastard. No offense to the lad. It's no fault of his birth, but he is not going to be accepted by the great houses unless you force them." Stannis's gaze hardened. "He has no claim. By law, I am the heir. Yet if we keep bickering, Joffrey remains in the Red Keep, mocking us all. Let us join forces, Renly. Bend the knee to me as the rightful king, and together we will take the city. Then, we can discuss your place in the new order." Renly arched an eyebrow. "Bend the knee? And what if I said you should bend the knee to me, since I have the reach behind me, the largest armies, and I am beloved by many lords? We are at an impasse, unless Lord Stark arranges a solution." Ned glanced between them. "We stand at the threshold of a battle that could destroy King's Landing, kill thousands, and bleed the realm. I propose a temporary truce. Let all armies remain outside the walls, and allow a small party from each claimant to meet in the Red Keep under truce to negotiate. I will ensure Gendry's presence so that any man can see he has the Baratheon look, so they can see the decree with the king's own signature. Then, if we fail to find a peaceful resolution, the armies may do as they must." Renly rubbed his chin. "Diplomacy, is it? I doubt Joffrey will open the gates. But if he does, it's likely a trap." Stannis gave Ned a hard stare. "This is folly. Joffrey will never yield. The Lannisters will not meet us in good faith. Better to storm the city, tear him from the throne by force." Ned's voice rose with a rare passion. "That would lead to sacking and slaughter. Thousands of innocents could die. Robert never wanted that. You were both his brothers, you know him. Do not let this come to that if there is any alternative." Renly snorted softly. "I doubt Cersei cares about a peaceful resolution, but I do enjoy the spectacle of a good negotiation. Very well, I will wait. For a time. If nothing is resolved, I'll take the city myself." Stannis exhaled through his nose, looking as though he wanted to refuse, but then grudgingly agreed. "I will allow you your parley, Ned Stark. But if the gates remain shut, we storm them. I will not be made a fool." So the stage was set for one final attempt at peace, or at least a settlement. Ned sent a messenger to the gates, demanding entry for a small party to speak with the Queen and King Joffrey under a banner of truce. Many doubted that Cersei would accept, but she did, likely to buy time or out of a belief that she might outmaneuver them. Thus, Ned Stark, Stannis Baratheon, Renly Baratheon, and a small contingent of guards and lords entered King's Landing through the mud gate under the watchful eyes of gold cloaks lining the battlements. The city looked haggard, with anxious small folk crowding the streets, fearful of siege. They were escorted to the Red Keep, where Joffrey waited on the Iron Throne, flanked by Cersei and the Hound, Ser Sandor Clegane. The throne room was full of Lannister men-at-arms, though presumably, they were sworn not to attack under the banner of truce. But who trusted the Lannisters? Joffrey sneered at the arrival of Stannis and Renly, eyes flicking over Ned Stark with hatred. "Traitors," he spat. "You dare come into my city, threatening war, all for some bastard's claim. I am the king." Stannis began to retort, but Ned stepped forward. "Joffrey, you hold the throne unlawfully. Your father's last decree states that Gendry, his recognized son, is the rightful heir. We do not come to dethrone you lightly, but we cannot allow the realm to live under this falsehood. If you yield now, we can spare the city the horrors of war. The boy Gendry can show mercy. We do not seek bloodshed." Cersei's emerald eyes burned with fury, though her face remained composed. "What nonsense is this, Lord Stark? You cling to a scrap of paper that my lord husband supposedly signed while delirious. Have you no shame, peddling a blacksmith's apprentice as a king? Do you truly think the realm will stand for it?" Stannis interjected. "You are the one who fathered bastards with your brother. Do not speak of shame." The accusation sparked a ripple of rage across Cersei's face, but she kept her voice level. "You have no proof, Stannis. And even if you did, the realm loves Joffrey. They will not follow some unknown bastard, or a cold, humorless man like you, or a vain fool like Renly." She turned to the boy king. "Joffrey, summon the Kingsguard. These traitors should be arrested." The gold cloaks and Lannister men stirred, some stepping forward. Immediately, Stannis's men bristled, hands on swords. Renly's guards followed suit. A single spark, and the throne room would become a slaughterhouse. Ned lifted his hands, voice resolute. "We came under a banner of truce. Any act of aggression here would be pure treachery. Is this how the Lannisters honor their word?" Joffrey smirked. "My word is law, traitor." Renly's eyes narrowed. "Do you forget that both my host and Stannis's, together with the North, outnumber yours by a great margin? Kill us here, and your city will be stormed, your mother's head on a spike." For a moment it seemed blood would be shed. Cersei weighed the chances, her gaze flicking between the men with swords half drawn. But the numbers were indeed against them. If she had them all killed, the city would fall, and the small folk's fury would be unimaginable. She lifted a hand, a silent order for the gold cloaks to stand down. Ned took a breath, remembering Gendry's desire to avoid bloodshed. "Let us see if reason can prevail. A great council can be called with the high lords of Westeros. Let them hear the proofs of Joffrey's bastardy. Let them see King Robert's decree. Let them decide if Gendry is to be recognized, or if Stannis prevails by law, or if—" He paused, glancing at Renly. "If the realm chooses another, this is the only way to avoid the devastation of war." Stannis scoffed. "The law is clear. The Great Council must confirm me." Renly shrugged. "Well, the Highgarden men will see reason, or perhaps they'll see me fit to wear the crown." Joffrey looked mutinous. "I do not consent to any council. I am king. My mother says—" Cersei placed a staying hand on his arm, though he shrugged it off. She spoke to Ned, her voice cold. "How convenient for you to propose a council after raising armies against us. We should have you in chains for that alone." Ned kept his voice steady. "Try it, and see how quickly your city burns. I do not want that. You do not want that. Let the lords gather. If they confirm Joffrey, then all our armies will stand down." He could feel Stannis stiffen behind him, but he pressed on. "But if they do not, you must step aside. That is the realm's best hope." The entire throne room crackled with tension. Cersei studied Ned Stark's face, then Stannis's, then Renly's, her gaze drifting to the throng of men behind them. She seemed to measure her odds. The silence stretched. Finally, she said, "We shall consider it." Joffrey opened his mouth to protest, but she silenced him with a glare. "We must consult the small council. Return to your camps, and we will send word." Ned signaled to withdraw, his retinue turning away, walking out of the throne room under the watchful eyes of the Lannister guards. Once outside, the tension in Ned's shoulders eased slightly, but he knew the respite was fragile. If Cersei decided to refuse, war would engulf the city. If she agreed, the realm might see a great council for the first time in decades, perhaps since the great council that had chosen Viserys 2 Targaryen generations ago. Stannis gave Ned a sidelong look. Your willingness to place your bastard boy before a council is unusual. What if they reject him? Ned sighed. Then so be it. I never wanted to tear the realm apart. I only want the truth to come out, and for Robert's last will to be honored if the lords deem it just. But if the lords say the boy is unfit to rule, or if they choose you by lawful succession, so long as Joffrey does not remain, I will have peace. Stannis pursed his lips. We shall see if you keep that vow, Lord Stark. Renly ambled up, shaking his head with a smirk. Imagine a great council deciding among me, Stannis, and a bastard. I dare say the realm has not seen so fine a mess in centuries. Ned could only manage a small grim smile. Better a messy council than a war that swallows half the kingdom. They returned to their respective camps outside the city walls, the siege lines still in place. All of Westeros now held its breath, waiting to see if a great council might be convened, or if the negotiations would collapse into bloodshed. Gendry had arrived from Riverrun that very morning, escorted by Catelyn and a strong guard. He lingered in Ned's tent, anxious about the outcome. When Ned told him about the parley, Gendry bit his lip. A council decides if I'm king or not. That's better than thousands dying, I suppose. Indeed, Ned said softly. I only wish Robert were here to see it. He might have learned that kingship is not always about the sword. Sometimes it's about compromise and the rule of law. We shall see how the realm chooses to proceed. Prepare yourself. If the council does come to pass, you will stand before the greatest lords of Westeros. Do not let fear guide you. Gendry nodded, though Ned could see the flicker of apprehension in his eyes. I'll do my best, my lord. And so they waited, with King's Landing surrounded. Ravens flew in all directions, carrying invitations to the great and mighty. Tense days turned into weeks. Within the city, small folk muttered about the shortage of food, and Cersei and Joffrey weighed the perils of refusing a great council. On the fields outside, the three armies kept careful distance, each watchful of the other. At night, Gendry stared at the walls, as if seeing his old life in Flea Bottom behind them. The life of a simple blacksmith's apprentice, a boy who hammered out nails and swords. Now, under the flickering torchlight, with Ned Stark's unwavering support, he stood on the cusp of unimaginable power. Whether the Great Council would crown him or cast him aside, none could say. But the realm was on a path none had expected, shaped by Robert's final testament and the quiet determination of Eddard Stark. If nothing else, the Game of Thrones had just become less certain for everyone. Yet in that uncertainty, for once, there was a glimmer of hope for a better outcome than endless war. The future awaited, shrouded in shadow, where bastards could be kings, and the old powers might be forced to yield to new possibilities. And Ned Stark, for all the burdens upon his shoulders, could only pray that he had done the right thing, for Gendry's sake, for the realm's sake, and for the sake of the honor he strove to uphold in a world of shifting loyalties.